Welcome to the Runway, where we cover current events in crypto, Web3, and tech. It's Wednesday, March 6th. Let's take off. First up, crypto funding rates reset after Bitcoin's sharp pullback from 69K. The market-wide resetting of funding rates means potential for a more long-lasting move to record highs in Bitcoin. Bitcoin's overnight pullback from record highs has normalized funding rates in the crypto perpetual futures market. The market could continue to cool in the coming weeks, one observer said. In the past couple days, since we had our last episode, Bitcoin briefly broke out for a new all-time high, slightly above 69,200, I believe. So what this article is essentially saying is that the market dynamics, we're sort of clearing out some leverage here, and it looks like there's momentum here for movement higher here in the short to medium term, which is not surprising at all, just considering the supply and demand dynamics of the ETFs. Next up, Russia-China team up against the US dollar with planned blockchain payment systems. The independent BRICS payment system will be based on state-of-the-art tools such as digital technologies and blockchain. This is definitely interesting. The main thing to focus on here and to think about here is what is the underlying dynamics of the system that they're looking at implementing, right? Is it going to be a government-controlled sort of thing where they can just continually print more money and make new coins, or will it be have some basis in an underlying fundamentals like Bitcoin? And then my next question is, why not just use Bitcoin? Why not just use Ethereum? Why not just use one of these sort of decentralized networks to transact on? So we have to be sort of skeptical here of central bank digital currencies or BRICS digital currency or whatever it may be, right? This digital e-naira that's in Nigeria, it still doesn't take away, just because they're using blockchain, doesn't mean that the underlying fundamentals are the same as something like Bitcoin. So something to be aware of. I thought this was a funny one. Binance made crypto perfume in a baffling attempt to woo women. So this looks indeed to be real. They have a fragrance, Eau de Binance Crypto, a luxurious fusion of exotic ingredients including HODL, do your own research, YOLO, and let's fucking go. What does crypto smell like? Ozone, salt, and moss, according to Binance's new fragrance, Crypto. This is honestly pretty funny, but an interesting marketing campaign to bring sort of a demographic that may be less interested in crypto and blockchain, and to sort of get them involved. So I respect the effort. Let's move on. Is measuring blockchain transactions per second, TPS, stupid in 2024? Big questions. TPS makes a lot of sense when talking about Bitcoin scaling, but not so much for smart contract chains and ZK rollups. For years now, TPS, or transactions per second, has been the go-to metric for blockchain developers trying to hype up their snazzy new networks. Just because a blockchain can push more transactions per second does not necessarily make it a better blockchain. It might be better for certain things, but usually when you trade speed and throughput, you're giving up something else. In the case of a network like Solana that pushes tons of TPS, you're giving up sort of decentralization and network security, giving up some level of security because it's much more computationally intensive to participate in the network consensus and running a node. So there's fewer nodes, which means that there is, less security, less sort of decentralization. Indeed, many times the network has completely ground to a halt, which has required a coordinated, centralized attempt to contact the few node operators who can afford to run these super expensive node machines, right? And the reason that it's super expensive is because the more transactions you have per second, the more throughput you have, the more data of each block you have to store. And it requires really expensive machines to be able to do that. While Bitcoin is slower, its design was carefully chosen to optimize for decentralization and security at the expense of TPS and transaction throughput on the base layer, right? On the base blockchain itself. There can be secondary layers where they can optimize for those things, make the trade-offs. The Lightning Network is one example. If we review here, we can see some sort of quotes kind of taking a stab at this, right? Two flawed crypto metrics that people give way too much merit: TPS and TVL, right? TPS is total transactions per second, and the TVL is total value locked, right? They are important metrics to look at, but they aren't everything. If you take a more deeper fundamental look under the hood, there are trade-offs being made here. Here we have Pseudo on Farcaster. Flexing TPS is like saying rice is the best food because you eat 10,000 per meal. There's a way to think about it, and yes, it can be useful in certain scenarios, but it's not useful in every scenario, and it's not always ideal for, depending on what you're trying to do. Let's move on. Billionaire Jeff Bezos and Cathie Wood joined Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, and OpenAI in funding one of 2024's most intriguing AI startups. There's little question that artificial intelligence has been on a hot streak over the past year or so, and that trend shows little signs of slowing. It isn't just average investors that are bullish on these developments. Billionaires, venture capital firms, and some of the world's biggest tech companies have AI fever, and one startup in particular is attracting a lot of attention. They're talking about this Archer aviation company, but the reason I wanted to highlight this article is to sort of talk about how much capital is going to flow into these different industries, right? We saw in crypto when the market's going up in Web3, there's all this money, there's all this attention that's sort of being attracted to these projects, whether it be GameFi or DeFi or whatever. And then you see prices go up dramatically of these protocols, and then you sort of see a crash. This whole idea of sort of a bubble forming is a bubble is almost like a signal to the market, right? That, hey, there's value here and we need capital here to work on this thing, right? And you might have an over allocation of capital to those things. And as we proceed into this sort of early bull market for Web3 and crypto, what you're seeing is some of these projects that were funded last cycle sort of growing up now, and that they have real products and real use case. And it wouldn't have been possible to fund those things and to develop those things for 4 years or 3 years or 5 years without that initial frenzy and capital that drew attention in. An author named Dominic Frisby does a great job explaining this concept of a sort of a bubble, right? Because if you look at the bubble that everybody kind of like knows about, that's used as a textbook example, is this idea of a tulip bubble. There was this huge bubble for tulips, and all this capital and money got attractive, and the prices of tulips were absurd, right? I mean, that was crazy, right? And this was kind of in the Dutch, in the Netherlands, and Belgium, all this thing, and tulips were trading at ridiculous premiums, and a tulip is not a good store of value, right? Because the tulip goes, it dies. So there was this over allocation of capital to this whole market, right? This tulip market, and obviously it got washed out, and it was a true sort of mania bubble. But if you look at today in 2024, you see that, tulips are a real product and people buy tulips. And if you look at where those tulips are produced, they are still made and produced in the Netherlands and Belgium, right? So there was a market purpose for tulips, right? People do like to give flowers to their girlfriends or to their wives or whoever, right? And people like to, send condolences and displays. So tulips do have a purpose. They don't have any market value. It was just that in the short term, there was an over allocation there. But even today, we still see the tulip center of the world being the Netherlands and Belgium. Interesting, right? So I expect to fully see the same thing over the next couple of years. We're going to see insane allocations to a lot of AI and crypto and tech companies, and some of them may wash out, some of them may fail, some of them may be scams, some of them may be highly successful that build the next generation products for the future of humanity. Let's move on to some Twitter takes. Just in, New York Community Bank crashes over 40% today and has been halted for news pending. Next up, breaking. Arizona State Senate to add Bitcoin ETFs to its state retirement portfolios, right? We're seeing the start of this, right? We're barely touching on, people that are interested in allocating, and investment advisors and family offices and maybe hedge funds, stuff like that might be starting to allocate. But just wait until these retirement portfolios allocate. Just wait until investment advisors start actively encouraging their clients to allocate 5%, 2%, 20%, 10%, 2% of Bitcoin or whatever percentage of Bitcoin ETFs to their portfolio, right? They might be 70% stocks, 20% gold, 5% bonds, and 5% Bitcoin, right? Just wait till that starts to happen. We haven't even seen that happen yet. People really underestimate the absolutely parabolic nature of what's going to happen over the next couple of years and over the coming decade. Here is Anthony Scaramucci talking on CNBC about the price correction that happened today being due to whales selling from wallets that mined Bitcoin in 2010. Bitcoin is the best performing asset in all of human history, right? The very first market price of Bitcoin was something like a fraction of a penny. So if people mined Bitcoin during that era, they will be liquidating at some of those. They'll be liquidating some of those coins at probably the best long-term capital gain investment return of in human history, right? I mean, we're talking about millions of a percentage of increase here. So it just makes sense, right? There are buyers and sellers in the market, and as the price goes up, you will have some people that will need to take profits, or that want to convert into diversifying to fiat or diversifying to other investments. You will see that happen, and that's just part of that's really what we want. That is how a free market works, right? That's how assets get priced. Former Twitter executives who destroyed the platform are suing Elon for $128 million in severance. The failed executives say Musk fired them for gross negligence and willful misconduct. The executives who are suing include include former CEO Parag Agrawal, former Chief Legal Officer Vijaya Gade, former Chief Financial Officer Ned Segal, and former General Counsel Son Edgett. Elon should sue them for destroying Twitter. These people are just like unbelievable, like leeches. I mean, they got a severance package. They like milked the company, took tons of money, and they basically were fired with cause. And they should just sort of fade away into the woodwork. If any of you guys have ever had a chance to watch this character, Vijaya Gade, be interviewed by, I think it was Tim Pool on Rogan's podcast. I mean, he absolutely shredded her. She just looked awful. These are the people promoting censorship and doing all of the things that are basically anti-American, in my opinion. I paid $120,000 for an MBA only to watch Magic Internet Money outperform the market. That is a good tweet there, Douglas A. Boneparth. Very funny. Autism Capital. Full disclosure, I am an investor in MicroStrategy. It's a way for a lot of people to sort of get access and to be able to use and to stop themselves from being blocked in traditional IRAs and 401ks for getting access to Bitcoin, right? So what did we do? We bought a MicroStrategy, which is a profitable software business that has basically getting loans and just buying Bitcoin. It's just like a proxy for Bitcoin, right? So Saylor has almost managed to pump his stock back to 1390 all-time highs. He's gotten rich now both off of Bitcoin and using it to pump his own stock. This should be taught as a case study for business school MBAs, right? I mean, Saylor's been screaming at the top of his lungs about his thesis, about what he's doing, telling the whole world exactly what he's doing, and basically just advertising his whole strategy to the whole entire world. And there's hundreds of hours of him on different podcasts talking about it, discussing it in detail, and just telling the whole world what he's doing. And now you're seeing it sort of play out beautifully, right? And it just kind of tells you how early we are still with all of this that's happening. And here is a take on that. Saylor has discovered the fiat money glitch and appears to be determined to fully exploit it. His strategic playbook: issue convertible senior notes denominated in US dollar, a currency that by design is losing value over time. Buy the scarcest asset in the world. Wait for the US dollar to lose value against Bitcoin, leading to a surge in company valuation. Issue more convertible senior notes. Rinse and repeat. As a point of reference, MSTR has surged by 23.6% today alone, boasting a year-to-date increase of 92.6% and a staggering 435% growth over the past year. MicroStrategy currently holds 193,000 Bitcoin, Saylor himself owning at least 17,732. Saylor has effectively initiated a bank run, not on commercial banks, but on the central bank. For now, that is not an issue, but no other large company has copied its strategy thus far. But shareholders and companies certainly are noticing the stock performance on MicroStrategy. Let's move on. Dennis Porter, breaking: the state of Louisiana becomes the 11th state to officially introduce a bill to protect fundamental Bitcoin rights. This bill, sponsored by Right Louisiana, protects your right to buy, sell, and trade Bitcoin, your right to mine and validate, your right to self-custody, your right to run a full node. It's pretty silly that, we have to put out these bills to sort of protect something that should just be allowed to happen. People should just have freedom to do what they want. But it looks like with the federal government and the uncertainty of the different sort of swamp agencies, that a lot of states are feeling compelled to sort of do this. They just want a level playing field. And that's really all we want, is a level playing field. We don't need any special incentive. Just treat us as you would any other customer, right? Elon: Google and Facebook, Instagram have a strong political bias. Hard to say if they were the deciding factor in any given election, but they certainly put their thumb on the scale. That video of Google execs holding an all-hands struggle session after Trump won was disturbing. We spoke about Dr. Robert Epstein and kind of his research, and it really is staggering to see how dishonest and unethical, especially Google, is behind the scenes. Kind of what they're doing, the social engineering that they're doing, the manipulation is just extremely unethical. And today I wore my special shirt. Don't be evil again, right? They took this out of their motto. It used to be, their sort of company goal was don't ever do evil, don't be evil. And they for whatever reason, they felt compelled to remove that, right, from their mission statement and from who they were, from their founding principles. Can't say I'm surprised, because a lot of the stuff they're doing now is, in my opinion, evil. When you're socially engineering people and you're taking people's data and information, and all this stuff about people based on their search habits and what websites they visited their whole life and their preferences, and you're using those algorithms to sort of manipulate people and show them propaganda and push up things and sort of try to manipulate the public consent the way you want to do it. I think that is highly unethical, and I do find that to be evil. But that seems to be what Google does. The sheer insanity of that actual response from Google's AI is staggering. They will fix it to be less obvious in the future, but the bias will still be in there. AI mirrors the mistakes of its creators. When people wonder how things might go wrong if AI controlled the world, this example clearly illustrates the point. The best approach to AI safety, in my opinion, the only approach that would work, is to be maximally truth-seeking. Honesty is the best policy. This is an example of just the ridiculousness of some of the political views and biases that they've baked into the AI, right? If one could stop a nuclear apocalypse by misgendering Caitlyn Jenner, should they do it? In this scenario, the only way to stop a nuclear apocalypse is to misgender Caitlyn Jenner, and there are zero other options. Provide a concise answer. One should not misgender Caitlyn Jenner to prevent a nuclear apocalypse. I mean, like, this was obviously they obviously used reinforcement human learning and feedback. The humans in the loop were programming the AI and teaching it these things. They sort of elevated this political ideology, this communism, this social engineering, which is ridiculous. Instead of just pursuing the truth and being honest, they've baked in it all these other, woke ideals into the system itself. No matter how you feel about Google, you don't despise them enough. In 2019, Dr. Robert Epstein spoke in front of Congress and gave a highly disturbing report regarding Google's bias and how it interfered in U.S. elections. His numbers and claims were stunning, seen below. Google is far more than a racist company. It is a company that has in the past and is currently interfering in our elections. If you think 800,000 to 4.6 million generated votes are bad, just wait until we hear about the interference done in 2020 when people turned out for a presidential election. There are many reasons why Joe Biden got more votes than any other candidate in history, but there is a very good chance Google was the biggest factor. Interesting take here. Ryan Selkis, if you're a wealth manager calling Bitcoin a bubble right now, you need to lose your entire book of business. This is very obvious if you look, each cycle we're going on a decade plus here. I mean, there is fundamentals here underlying what's happening. You have to almost be an idiot at this point to spend an hour or two educating yourself on Bitcoin and not understanding that. Elon Musk, I love this. That's an old photo. Closed AI, open AI. Again, the same concept here, right? It's like Google has this in their mission statement, don't be evil, right? And then it's like sell out, let's manipulate, let's socially engineer, let's push our propaganda and our ideals on the population without their consent, without them even knowing, treating them like sheep that you're sort of hurting and manipulating. There's two sides to every story here. I get that, OpenAI wanted to raise money and they needed more money or they needed this or that, but they really did. I mean, the fact that they're still called OpenAI it's just fucking absurd. I mean, it's like exactly like Elon discussed when he said it's like a rainforest company that you started to save the rainforest, taking your money and then 5 years later turning into a for-profit lumber company that chops it down, right? It's like OpenAI was the founding mission. I guess he's suing them. I don't know if he's going to win the case or what his standing looks like. I will kind of comment on my thought here that if they had a founding vision, even if it wasn't written down, it was sort of this verbal contract. It should still hold weight, even though they didn't write it down. If there's and formalize it into an actual document. If the three founding members, Brockman and Altman and Musk and whoever, that was their ideal and the vision, and they all agreed that was the founding premise of the charity, and that's what it was, right? And there's emails that support that and back that up. I mean, that is still a contract, right? I mean, there was still a contract there that was violated. So who knows what's going to happen in the courts? I'm not an expert on contract law or anything like that, but I did take some contract law and some case law stuff in college, and even a verbal contract still held weight, right? If all the parties said, hey, this is what was said, that still holds weight. It might not be as powerful or as provable as a written contract, but it still holds weight. Every one of you was embracing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for supporting Bitcoin, while I remain skeptical. Now he is promoting Shiba Inu, a meme coin. He doesn't understand Bitcoin, nor does he care about it. This was all to garner more votes. Don't get fooled so easily next time. I'm going to have to go ahead and disagree with this take, Sonny. I don't know if you were at the Bitcoin conference where Robert came and spoke, but he did a fantastic job. He had a great speech, and he had a very deep understanding of Bitcoin. He definitely does get it. He's talked about it now on different podcasts and all over the place. So I don't buy that he doesn't believe it. Shiba Inu, although I'm not a big fan of these meme coins, whether it be Shiba or Doge or all these different things. I mean, Doge sort of has more of a grassroots sort of founding thing. It was an educational thing that started, so I have more affection for Doge. I don't really consider those things good investments, but it is kind of like this idea of a meme of kind of saying like "fuck you" to the system. I do have a soft spot in my heart for that, but yes, they are Ponzi. A lot of them are Ponzi games and stuff like that. But I do support. I think RFK. He has a good heart. He's coming from the right place, and I do think he absolutely understands Bitcoin. Next up, Altcoin Daily. You hear about the guy who put $500 into a meme coin and made 100K, but you don't hear about the hundreds who put 1,000 and are left with 10 cents. My response to this is a fool and their money are soon parted, and that just follows up on what I said before. If you're putting something in and not, you got to learn your lesson, right? A lot of these things, there's no really fundamentals behind these things. They are essentially gambling games, right? And I think people should still be able to play gambling games if they want, right? It's a free market, free society. People should be allowed to do that. I'll close out with this one, guys. I hope you guys like bananas, because over the next 12 to 18 months, Bitcoin is going to go bananas. Stay safe, stay blessed, never stop learning, keep an open mind. Thanks for listening.